Okay.
Okay, you're good to go, Rui.
It's good. Okay. So sorry about this. And one more time, welcome and thank you for joining. This meetup will be in English in honor to our great guest, Chris Webb. Thank you for joining, Chris. And thank you for all the hard work you put into the community. I believe it's 17 years now. I must tell you that you were one of the first references that I have when I started working in this amazing world of Microsoft BI. I think when I start searching about MDX at the time, and most of the people probably don't know what is MDX, which it's kind of similar to my kids not knowing what is a floppy disk, but maybe that's good because nowadays we have DAX that it's more powerful. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for making yourself available to speak with in our community. So the agenda for today, we will keep as usual. We'll do the welcoming. We are going to do the raffle of the last meetup. Then we will have our sponsor session with Fscope, and the Power BI news will be made by Miguel Felix. And then, of course, the session, the Excel and Power BI session from Chris Webb. About the community, this is growing every month. So we are very, very close to the 3,000 members, 32 meetups, and we are one of the top 10 communities, Power BI communities on Meetup, and that's because of you, because you are always, you keep attending, and so thank you for that. Thank you for sharing the feedback. Thank you for being with us. It's a great pleasure to organize these meetups for you, and let's keep it growing. It's been an amazing experience. About our channels, we now have a website. It's a website made with Power BI, so it's an amazing website. So please visit and give us feedback. It was made by Manuel Diaz. I think it was a great idea because we are a Power BI community. We made our website with Power BI, and then we use the publish to web. This session will be recorded. It's being recorded, and in the end, it will show up in our YouTube channel. If you want to sponsor one of our meetups, or if you want to speak in one of our meetups, I actually created forms as a call for speakers. So if you want to share something with us, if you want to share a use case, a user story, please do send us an email or just fill up the form. And if you want to just volunteer and help us organize the next meetups, also please contact us. We are always open for those opportunities. In the end of this session, I will share a link with the feedback. So feedback is really, really important for us. And this time, we will give away 2 certification vouchers. And they will be offered by Devscope. In the end, I will share the link. So please don't forget to give us feedback because that's the thing that makes us improve. And we always look to that feedback with great detail to be able to improve every time. About the last meetup, it was sponsored by Culture BI, and the giveaway they will give away 6 tech vouchers, and I will draw it now. So I have here the names of the people that answered the submission form. That's why it's really important. So please don't forget to do it in the end. And I already pasted here. And I will draw.
Manu, you're not sharing the screen.
Oh yeah. Okay, it's here. And I will draw 6 of them. So let's the first one. So Carla Daniela Moreira Bessa, congratulations. Let me also put it here. So we have our first winner. Let's go to the second one. Sérgio Ferraz. Third one. Will Laredo, congratulations. Monica Sarango. We need to do this in Power BI. So probably next one, we'll do a raffle in Power BI because now we are using the Microsoft Forms for the feedback. That will make our life easier. And André Rocha. So we have the 6 winners. Just for precaution, I will also draw 3 subs. Okay. Castro. And 2 more. Oh, the same one. There is probably a bug here. Alexandre Machado. What's happening? Okay, copy paste issue. And the last Rui Moreira. Okay, congratulations to all. And I don't know what's happening, but and I have the emails, and I will send them an email and give you the tech voucher. This will allow you to buy those or help you buy those headphones that you always wanted. And one more time, thank you for Go to the BI for sponsoring our meetup. Now let's move to our sponsor session. It will be from DevScope. Jose, are you ready?
Yes. Okay, so I need to share my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Are you seeing my desktop, my PowerPoint? Can you confirm, please?
I can see, yes.
Okay, so let's start because we don't have a lot of time. So first of all, thank you very much for this invitation. I will be presenting our latest product. It's called Power BI Data Portal. We are building this solution to enable a very easy way to share data with different users, external users, for example. And to explain how we are building this, let me introduce you here to the topic. So first of all, nowadays we have a lot of systems. Some vendors may try to convince you that putting everything on the same server it's a very good idea, especially if their server is very expensive. But in reality, what we are trying to do is spread and connect different systems, and most of the times we end up building these processes to transform the data and move it to ways of optimizing the query of this information. So every time we do a ETL process, we create these data warehouse, data marts. We are trying to build something that is much better for the users that are using the dashboards. Nowadays, if a user is browsing a dashboard, for example, on their mobile phone or on their browser, behind the scenes, we have this powerful tabular data engine that is answering all these pivoting questions, and it's incredible the performance that we have here for this cost. But besides that, we are also very interested in the way that the cloud storage now is being used to store data. And some of these processes may end up generating lots of data and we can store this on data lake. And the Power BI team has developed this data flow concept or technology to do these transformations. And one of the side effects of doing this kind of processing is that we can store this information on Azure Data Lake using this layer of CDM folders. So CDM folders is building the metadata that we need to allow tools like Power BI to explore this data, but also other tools like Databricks and Hadoop and other developers using APIs. This can allow us to process large sets of data on top of data lake, and the price of storing data this way is incredibly low. So this is a challenging architecture actually to the traditional data warehouse products. Okay, so this is very interesting, and we were really enjoying this kind of concept, and we thought that maybe we could extend this to other layers of our organization, and we can start thinking about the partners when a company needs to share something with another company, and we can do it in a way that it's decoupled completely from the internal systems. Not only partners, but we can also start thinking of curated data sets that we want to prepare for specific applications. So what we are trying to do here is create this concept of data on the edge of our organizations. We want to curate which data sets we want to publish. We want full control of what can be done with these endpoints, and create keys. It's like API management and a content delivery network for our database. And this, of course, with very good performance and at the price of Azure Data Lake. So what we built here was a new product. This Power BI data portal it's like a content management system for data. Of course, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We are using exactly the same tools. Our users are already creating inside Power BI. So data flow is our preferred method of moving data into this data lake. We are using exactly the same conventions, the same structure. But on top of this, we publish the endpoints. And to show you here how this works, I'm going to share here a data source. In this case, our data sources are exactly the Power BI data flows. Just have to list them and select which one we want to publish. In this case, we are publishing a ranking for real estate agents. And this is a simple scenario that we use in our case. And the next step is to expose this to a specific target authorization. Max work here is an identity of an application in this case. And so now this user, this external user, can be on a different company, can use his own client, for example, Power BI, connect to OData endpoint, and immediately he has access to our data set that is being generated by our data flow. So this is a very simple way to start publishing these data sets outside. Behind the scenes, what we've implemented is actually an API for data flow or for data lake. The concept here is an endpoint that is not limited by the restrictions on workspaces and permissions and Azure Active Directory. That we remove those limitations, and we open here other types of authentication. At the end, we are using only the read-only static files in data lake, so we don't depend on any server online. It's just a different way of exposing this information. We've been doing some other features on top of this, like the OData protocol, because we want to enable scenarios like filtering pagination, and we want to do this in a very simple way. So here I'm showing as a test, showing Postman calling this endpoint. As you can see here, the response in JSON and the latency here, even with a filtering of the top 10, the latency here is 62 milliseconds, and we can execute this more times, and it's consistent. And this is a very good outcome for this kind of scenario. So in terms of what we enable with this kind of scenarios, we can think of scenarios where we want to share data with partners, with customers, with other teams in a simple way. And for example, the data scientists, they can use this endpoint directly without having to create other ETL processes to extract the data for them. If we are working with suppliers, or if we want to develop a Power Apps application or a process automation using Power Automate, these are very good reference data for these applications, and we want to make this extremely simple to do. So the product now is a very easy back office in a simple way to share data on a business-to-business scenarios. We try to make this easy to manage, to centralize all the data sets we are publishing, make it safe, especially because we decouple completely from the internal systems. We want to make sure that we are doing this for the edge. So we want to make it cacheable as much as possible, even with the filtering capabilities, but we want to make this as fast as possible because we are seeing here opportunities to create data for applications. And in these cases, we don't want those applications or external users to send more traffic to our internal system. So there's a lot of nice features here. I think we are changing the concept of on-demand requesting data from SQL servers to more push mode, where we prepare the data and we push it to the external applications. So the product is being launched in a couple of weeks. We are open for beta tests. Beta users, please try this, and we will offer you a 30% discount once we release the product. So please give us feedback on how you want to use this kind of product. To give some context, this is part of a suite of products we've been developing. Most of our products end with the generation and the creation of dashboards, reports, the publication and distribution of content. We've been using this, our own teams, our Romano's teams, but also external users, external companies are using these products to solve problems worldwide. So please let us know, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Romano.
Thank you, Jose. Miguel, are you ready for the news?
Yes, thank you, Jose. Great product from DevScope again. So great news for everyone. Can I share my screen, please?
Yeah. Oh.
Is everyone seeing?
Yes.
Okay. So this month we had several news, some exciting news, I think. There were great products coming out. So let's start. The first one was, I think, the Articulator Visual. This is a great opportunity to have the Power BI custom visualizations within Power BI Desktop. This I don't know if anyone has ever used it before. I made one or two, but this is a very cool tool because it allows to make custom visuals without any coding. So we don't need to be experts on R or on any other type of language, that we can just point and click as we do. And it's very cool. And as you can see, it's just 5 steps. So we import the Certiculator visual, add the fields, edit that visualization, and then start building. They have several examples in the Certiculator website that you can upload to this visualization. So I think it's a good way to improve the custom visualizations and to improve all our reportings that we have during the creation of all types of information. So I think it's a great add-on. Another one that is also, I think this one especially had a great buzz on every media on Power BI. I think just on the first week I saw at least 10 YouTube videos about people making automations within Power BI. And this comes in a way that allows us to make not only the information that we have to be more alive, but to interact outside Power BI with the information of our report. So we can send notes, we can create tasks, we can copy data, we can execute the flows based on the data context. Also, we can have sharing our data within a Teams or within just a simple Outlook email. We can export the data. So it's also a very important new visualization that allows us to bring the full power of the Power Apps. It's another part of the Power Apps that allow us to have a great context-based information and have our reports really get action. So I don't know if anyone here has also experience with Power Automate. I have some, but it's a really good way to improve. So connections with SharePoint, connections with data sets. There is a great video about making the refresh of data directly within the Power BI report. So this allows the users not to have to wait for the report to update every X hours, and they update it automatically from within the report. So I think it's a great visualization to have if you want to really take the next step. Also, the premium generation 2 timeline was updated. They rescheduled everything because of the great feedback that they have. So they are starting on May 17. They are starting with a public preview, and they are expecting to have it ready for general availability on July 2021. This is also great news, especially with all the the premium per user features that were launched. So having these new capabilities of the new architectural redesign for Power BI Premium, it's also nice to have the schedule a little bit ahead than they were expecting. So hopefully soon we'll have this run up and running. So they are in public preview, so you can test it out if you want to. Goals. I think this is also one that brought a lot of buzz around everyone in Power BI. I know that for a fact that there are some people within our team of this group. At least Pedro is very excited about this one. I'm also very excited about this one. It's goals in Power BI. So we are able to produce some dashboards based on organization achievements and business objectives. This will be data-driven, collaborative, and adaptable. And that way, people in an easy way, they can progress their goals. They can proactively share updates and dive into their data. So this is an easy way. Everyone is always using Power BI to make reports against KPIs, and now on the service they have the opportunity to have it already on an easily way to set up all the goals that the teams need to set up their day-to-day evaluation. So, and have a quick scorecard to drive significant changes and information. So, also a good improvement, I think. But let's end this with several ones that we had the MBAS this past month, and they did a lot of new announcements. Some of them that we already saw and that they already are implementing, the Power Automate, for example, the goals. But there are also others, the automated insight that will be coming soon, the lineage view, the modern tooltips that they are starting to show on the service, and I believe they will be soon to be also on the desktop. The deploy of Power BI apps from Teams, this is also a cool feature, so we do not need to go to Power BI service to deploy an app. We can do it from Teams. This will also be coming soon. And also in terms of organization, the data loss prevention enhancements, the paginated reports. This is also a very cool one. That is, previously, if you wanted paginated reports, you had to add a premium capabilities. They are making desktop custom visualization for paginated reports, so you can have on the desktop, you can have paginated reports. This is also a cool one that will interact in a more efficient way and more direct way with our reports. Very cool features that are coming. Stay on top of the community of Power BI with everything that they are posting on their blog. Everything that we have over here, it's there. So I think it was a good month for Power BI and for all the improvements that they have. So basically, it's this. Thank you for your attention, and now let's go to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel. Chris, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready. 45 minutes, yes?
Yeah, more or less.
Cool. All right. Let me present. Let me click the button again. There we go. All right.
Still not seeing your screen. No, it's okay.
Good. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for inviting me to speak. My name's Chris Webb. I work at Microsoft on the Power BI customer advisory team, which basically means I go out and help large customers be successful with Power BI. I've been blogging, as Rui said, for quite a long time, and my blog and my Twitter handle are there if you want to follow me. And what I'm going to be talking about today is using Excel as a reporting and analysis tool for Power BI data. Now, probably 70% of what I show in this session is very old functionality. A lot of the functionality I will show you has been around in Excel for 15 or 16 years. It was built for analysis services and it just works for Power BI. That doesn't mean that it's not new to people. You know, a lot of people don't even realize what's there. But you know, some of this has been around for a long time. The other 30% is very, very new. Some of it doesn't work properly for me yet on my machine, even though I'm running early builds of things inside Microsoft. Some of it I will have to describe rather than actually demo to you. But this is certainly one of the things that I'm very excited about and I'm very enthusiastic about. So let me first of all go into a little bit more detail about what I mean by using Excel as a reporting and analysis tool. There is one thing that we all know about with Excel, that one feature that all Power BI users ask about, and it's export to Excel. And I can tell you right now that I will not be talking about export to Excel in this session. In fact, this is the last time I'm going to be mentioning it. Instead, what I'm going to be talking about is the ability to link Excel dynamically up to data stored in Power BI. So to use Excel as a tool for analyzing data and building reports on data that is stored in Power BI, in the same way that you can use Power BI Desktop to create a live connection up to a Power BI dataset, or indeed use paginated reports on top of a Power BI dataset. So really what we're talking about is using Excel as the third way of building reports and doing analysis on data that stays inside your Power BI dataset. Now, most of this session will be demos of what you can do. But before we get on to the demos, there are two questions that I'd like to talk about a little bit. First of all, as an Excel user, and this is something that I think a lot of our Power BI users are before they even think about using Power BI. As an Excel user, why would I be interested in using Power BI with Excel? You know, what's wrong with doing things in the same old way that people have always done with Excel? So some of this may be obvious, but it's worth repeating again. If you look at what Excel users often try to do with their data and their reports, and what Excel users want to do with Power BI sometimes, exporting to Excel has a number of really obvious problems. You know, if your users get into the habit of clicking the export to Excel button, whether that's in Power BI or any other data source, they are getting into a manual process. Somebody has to always go there in the morning, click export to Excel and copy that data to the relevant worksheet and maybe run some macros, drag and drop some formulas, run various other things, Power Query queries, to be able to get the data in the format so it fits inside somebody's Excel report that the company depends on. And of course, when that person goes on holiday or they move to a new job or they have to stay at home and quarantine because they have COVID, the process breaks down, the report doesn't get updated, and there are big problems. So exporting to Excel, even though users really want to do it, is a bad idea. Other reasons why it's a bad idea, including, well, if somebody exports to Excel in a company, there is probably somebody else, maybe multiple other people who are exporting the same data to Excel. And that means that then if they export at different times or they apply different business logic, then any reports are going to be inconsistent and people will argue about what the meaning of the data is. And of course, Excel can't handle the data volumes that Power BI can, and Excel is not as fast as aggregating large amounts of data. So I think as Power BI people, we know quite easily why exporting to Excel is bad and why people who want to build reports in Excel should use Power BI as a data source rather than exporting. But there's another more interesting question that we need to talk about. If I'm a Power BI user and I know how to build reports using Power BI Desktop or even using paginated reports using Power BI Report Builder, why should I be interested in using Excel to build reports? And indeed, why should I be telling my users about how they can use Excel to build reports? You know, why shouldn't those users go away and start to use Power BI Desktop? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, users are always more happy in Excel. That's why they want to export data to Excel. So what I would say is that if you're trying to get wide adoption for Power BI across all of your users, then the functionality that I'm going to talk about in this session, where you can get the best of Excel and the best of Power BI, is going to be really important, because it means that your end users can use a tool that they're comfortable with. So with a little bit of training, where they can see how to connect Excel up to Power BI, or where they can see the benefits, where they can realize that, exporting to Excel has a lot of problems, they can start to use Excel. And, if they have a problem and they say, well, how do I build this very specific chart? Well, they probably know, because they know Excel. Also, there are always questions about how people build their own calculations on top of Power BI data. Now, we know that you can do this with DAX, and I would always recommend DAX and creating your own measures to be the first choice. But at the same time, DAX is hard. I find DAX hard pretty much, and your end users will definitely find DAX hard. So if you can get the raw data into Power BI and then maybe use Excel formulas to build calculations on top of it, then that's going to be a great way of solving specific problems. What's more, I would say even for hardcore Power BI users, there are reasons why Excel is a good idea for certain types of use case. First of all, I would say that Excel pivot tables are great for data exploration. Now, very, very frequently, I see people try to build Power BI reports that behave like pivot tables. Now, the Power BI matrix visual has a lot of functionality that has been added to try and make it behave a bit like a pivot table, but it still doesn't really behave exactly like a pivot table. And pivot tables are great for specific scenarios when you want to explore data. I always say that Power BI reports are good for answering questions where you know what the question is, whereas a pivot table is great for scenarios where you don't know what the question is. You just want to see what's there in the data and explore it. In my opinion, nothing in Power BI, not even the visual personalization filter feature that came in last year, really does this as well as an Excel pivot table. And if your end users are asking you to build a report that looks like an Excel pivot table, well, why not just give them an Excel pivot table instead? There's another similar scenario that I will show in a moment. There are lots of situations in Power BI where you need to build financial type reports. Now, these types of reports are often built in Excel anyway, and as a result, the layout of these reports is often very much tied up with Excel functionality. Now, again, you can build financial reports in Power BI, and indeed there are quite a lot of custom visuals that allow you to create the types of report layouts that people want for financial reports in Power BI. But again, why go away and buy another tool that allows you to recreate Excel functionality when you can use Excel? And as I'll show in a moment, using Excel cube functions actually allows you to create financial type report layouts very, very easily. So there are some scenarios where for a Power BI user, Excel as an option for creating reports is really useful. Okay, so that's enough of me talking. Let's go on to the demos. So the first question, as far as kind of demos go, is how do I actually connect Excel up to my Power BI data? There are actually two ways of doing this. From Power BI, you can actually create a new workbook. Actually, I've just realized the slides here are wrong. You can create a new workbook connected to your Power BI dataset from inside the Power BI service, or you can start in Excel and connect to Power BI from there. So let me share my screen, and let's see how we can do this. Let me know when you can see my screen. Hopefully you can see it now.
It's available.
Good. All right. So there are a number of different ways, if I start in the Power BI service, that I can create an Excel workbook connected up to my data. So I've got a data set I'll be using for all of my demos. I'll show it to you in a moment, but it's not really particularly interesting. It's a very simple model. It contains some open data from the UK about real estate property transactions, but really the data itself isn't very interesting. But I have published it up as a data set to the Power BI service. Now, when I can see a data set in the Power BI service, I can create a connection from that data set to Excel in a couple of different ways. First of all, we have the new Datasets hub in the Power BI service, which you can find by clicking this button here. This is a place where you can find the datasets that you have access to and which you can build reports from. So here in the Datasets hub is the dataset that I've published. I can click on this. It shows me a screen with some information about the datasets. And you can see that I've got an option to create a report from in Power BI. But I've also got over here and over here a button that allows me to analyze in Excel. When I click this button, this will actually allow me to download all of an Excel workbook connected up to this data set. I have the same option here in a couple of different places. If I go to the workspace that I published this data set to, I can click on the ellipses here and click Analyze in Excel. And if I finally click this option, you can see that it's downloading an Excel file. It used to be that it opened an ODC file, which would download and open Excel. Now we actually create an entire Excel file. And if I download that and open it, here is the Excel file. I'm going to need to enable editing and enable content. But when I do this, you'll see that I've got an Excel file with a pivot table in it. In a moment, it will connect up to the dataset properly. There we go. And I've got a pivot table here connected up to my dataset. Now, the pivot table behaves basically like the pivot tables we all know and we all use in Excel. I can click on some measures here. I can drag and drop and build my pivot table. The really important thing to understand is in this Excel workbook, I am not downloading the data from my dataset. Every time I interact with this pivot table, Excel is generating queries to go away and get the data needed for this pivot table dynamically. So every time I change my pivot table, every time I add a slicer or a filter, then a new query will be generated to get the data from my data set. Sorry. All right. So I assume that's somebody that needs to be muted. So I'll mute everybody. Sorry about that. So every time a query the pivot table gets updated, a new query gets run in the background. Now, I'm going to close this Excel workbook and go to an Excel workbook that I already have open. This is an empty Excel workbook. And what I will show you here is perhaps more useful. Because if you're building a report in Excel from data stored in Power BI, you probably want to start in Excel rather than have to go to the Power BI service to find the data set that you want to connect to. And there are actually two ways that I can connect from Excel up to the Power BI service. First of all, and this is going to be available or should be available to everybody right now, if you've got Excel for Microsoft 365, you can go to the Data tab, click Get Data, and then click the From Power BI option here. Another way to get the same result, and this is something you may not have access to in Excel just yet, is to go to Insert, pivot table. And now I have the option, and I think you will in the future, to click this From Power BI option. Now, this does the same thing as what I just showed you on the Data tab, but I think it's more natural for an Excel user. But if I click on here, what we will see is a new pane appears on the right-hand side, which shows me a list of all of the data sets that I have access to and I can build reports from. Now, I'm doing this on the Microsoft Power BI tenant, and we have a lot of data sets here, which is why it's slow, but I can search. I can find the data set that I want to connect to, click OK, and this will build me a pivot table. So here we go, and the end result is that I've got a pivot table connected back to my Power BI dataset. The same result that I got when I clicked the Analyze It in Excel button in Power BI. Now, I've created my connection. Let's move on and talk about what I can do with a pivot table. Now, as I said earlier, pivot tables are great for exploring data. So I start with an empty pivot table, and what I see up here at the top are all of the measures that I've got available in this data set. Now, something that will change in the future, and again, I don't see this yet, but this is something coming later in the year, is that we're going to move to somewhere where the situation which is more consistent with Power BI, where measures are displayed on the table where they're defined. I kind of like actually seeing my measures up here in a pivot table, but in the future this will change. And I can click on my measures to add them to the pivot table. There we go. And let me zoom in so we can see a little bit better. I can see all of my fields. I can drag them into my pivot table. I can move things around. I can add pivot table slices, pivot table filters. So I'm going to drag ownership type down to the filter area. And I can add, for example, county to the slicer. So when that comes back, there we go. There is my pivot table. Let's close that for the moment. And I can click on a slicer and the data changes. I can click on my filter and the data changes. So I can interactively analyze the data stored in Power BI. Something you will notice at the moment, which is different to pivot tables, is if I grab a field and try to drag it down here to the values area, I can't do this. Right now, I have to build all of my measures in my data set before I use them in Power BI. I can't drag any field into values and automatically get it to aggregate like a normal pivot table. This is something else that will change later this year. Okay, there are a few other things to mention about pivot tables connected to Power BI, which are slightly different to how normal pivot tables work. For example, this is a regular slicer. I can also create a timeline slicer connected to date fields in Power BI. So if I click on the timeline button, you can see that I've got a date field up here. Personally, I don't use timeline slicers that much, but they can be quite useful if you want to be able to select a date range. So I can select years, quarters, months, and days here. And I can filter like this. And you can see that it's filtering my pivot table. Let me just delete that. Something else to mention is that if I go up to the pivot table analyze option, we've got some functionality here called fields, items, and sets. Now, this is only available when you've got a pivot table connected up to Power BI or indeed analysis services. And this has some really quite interesting applications. So in financial reports, quite often what we want to be able to do is to build a report or a pivot table with what I would call an asymmetric set on columns. That means that I want to have specific combinations of measures and other values on my columns. Now, this is something that is actually not possible in Power BI at all, which can be quite frustrating. But with an Excel pivot table, I can do this. So let me drag month name up onto columns. Let me drag property type onto rows. And here what I've got is a pivot table where on columns I have every combination of month and my two measures, average price paid and count of sales. But what happens if I want to have a layout where I see average price paid for every month, but then count of sales for only December? Well, I can do this using fields, items, and sets. So if I click on fields, items, and sets and say, let's create a set based on column items, I can create a set. A set is just something that you can think of as a predefined selection that could appear on rows and columns. And then what I can do here is I can delete rows. So I'm going to delete all of the rows with count of sales in, apart from December. October and November. I can also delete my grand total rows if I want. I've got options to add new rows, to copy rows as well. If I know some MDX, and I know not many people will, I can even go in and edit the MDX here. But if I click OK, this can take a little bit of time sometimes, so we'll wait a moment. But now I've clicked OK, it will create this set, which is, like I said, a predefined selection, and it will apply it on the columns for my pivot table. It will also appear as an option, as something that I can select inside my pivot table. And now what you can see is my pivot table has every month for average price paid, but just count of sales for December. So it's quite useful. There are a few other things that I can do with this. So let me just, okay, so if we go up to here to sets, there's the set that I've created. I can actually just take that away and put a measure back directly into here. There are a few other things that I can do that are useful. Let me just take property type name. That's going to be a bit more easy to understand. I can also create some measures here on my own in the pivot table if I want. I can go to OLAP tools and create a calculated measure. Unfortunately, even though this creates a measure, it creates a measure using the MDX language, which is an older language, not DAX. It still works with Power BI, but if I create a measure here, so count of sales times 2, this actually uses MDX syntax, not DAX. So it can be a bit confusing. But if I click OK and add that on here, I've created a new measure called demo. My new measure is available up here. I can add it to my pivot table, and there's count of sales multiplied by 2. Something else useful that I can do, which isn't really easily possible inside Power BI, is create calculations on other fields and hierarchies. So if I go up to here and create MDX calculated member, I can say create something called detached plus flat. And let's say that I want to sum up the values for detached and flat on here. I'm going to create a new item on property type name. Drag detached in here and drag flat in here. Click OK. And in a moment, there you can see I've got my new row, which is that plus that. So a dynamic calculation that isn't a measure. That's quite handy. Okay, and all of these things I can actually manage, and I can delete my calculations. So I'm going to go back up to here and delete this. In a moment when it updates. One of the last things to mention, and this is again another interesting trick to know, is that here I've got a pivot table and I've got a pivot table filter. I've also got a slicer here. The slicer is connected to this pivot table. Something that isn't always known is that in Excel, if I've got a slicer connected to a pivot table connected to Power BI, I can connect that slicer to multiple pivot tables and pivot charts. So at the moment, when I change my slicer, this pivot table updates. But if I go into here and let's say we want to insert a new pivot table, and I'm going to choose an existing connection, which will be the one that's already created up to here. And I'm going to create this on an existing worksheet. And now I could put average price paid in here, break that down by month. At the moment, when I click my slicer, nothing changes in this new pivot table. But if I click on the slicer, go to the slicer pane up here, click on report connections and check the box to link it to this new pivot table, you will see that my slicer controls both pivot tables, which is really useful for building reports. The last thing that I want to show on a pivot table is that if I want to see the transactions that made up this value, I can double click and it will create a new sheet and it will actually drill through to the underlying data. Now, unfortunately, for reasons I'll explain in a moment, this isn't particularly helpful because it's drilled through to the table that I declared this measure on, and I had to put this measure on kind of the wrong table to make another demo work. But at the moment, just understand that we can create a table that is linked back to our Power BI dataset. All right, so that's pivot tables. There are, however, other options for linking data up to Power BI. Pivot tables are the most common, but let's look at some of the other options. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this sheet, move it to the end. Maybe I didn't do that. Yeah, create a copy. Sorry, I should press that option here. There we go. And so let's just delete this pivot table to make things easy. Click contents. All right. So here I've got a pivot table. But what I'm going to do now is actually show you the second option for connecting to data from Power BI, which is cube formulas. Now, this is a feature that has been around in Excel for 15 or 16 years. It's always worked with Power BI and Analyze in Excel, but it is perhaps one of the least known features inside Excel. But I think it is incredibly useful. Cube formulas are some Excel functions that allow you to link individual cells in Excel to individual values in Power BI. They are regular Excel functions, so you can create them by just typing in a cell in the way you would do any other Excel formula. However, the easiest way to get started with cube functions is to create a pivot table like the one I've got here. Go to Pivot Table Analyze, OLAP Tools, and then select Convert to Formulas. So if I do this and convert to formulas, and click Convert again, my pivot table is going to disappear. There will be no more pivot table. What we'll have instead are cells with formulas in. Now, you'll see that when I click on my slicer, the data still changes. The pivot table filter also still works. But the important thing to understand is that there is no more pivot table, just cells with formulas in. And what this means is that because these are cells with formulas in, I can now format them using regular Excel functionality. I can now link to them in nice, easy, in the way that I would do with any other Excel function. I can treat this as like in the same way that I would do any other cell with an Excel formula in it. Now, why do I want to do this? Because it's important to understand you do lose some functionality here when you use this. First of all, this is no longer a dynamic thing. Pivot tables grow and shrink depending on your data. Now I've got a fixed range of cells with formulas in. And for example, if a new property type name appeared in my data, it would not appear dynamically inside Excel. I would have to go in and create a new row here in this worksheet to add it in. But on the other hand, this dynamic behavior of pivot tables can be quite difficult when you want to create a nicely formatted report, because pivot tables do grow and shrink, which makes them difficult it makes it difficult to build nicely formatted reports. You can apply formats to pivot tables, but pivot tables always look like pivot tables, which isn't always great. Whereas here, I could make this bold. I could go to the outlines and add a border, and maybe let's add a top border and a bottom border and do all those things that we like to do. Maybe make this bold as well. And you can see how I can start to use just regular Excel functionality to format my report and make it look like a nice Excel report. But of course, these cells, the formulas, the functions in them, link back to Power BI. And that means that even if I take these cells and let's just paste them over here, you can see that when I change my slicer, they all still update in the same way. Paste that back over here. Now, that's using Excel cube formulas by exploding a pivot table. But like I said, these are just cells with Excel functions in. And what I can do is if I want to add something, maybe there's a measure that I want to add in here, I can type a new formula inside a cell. So what I can do here is I'm going to type the Excel function that allows me to put a new member in my report. So this would be something that would appear on rows or columns in the pivot table. And this is going to allow me to add a new measure. I need to specify the connection. I need to specify which member I want to use. And we've got some IntelliSense here to help me find what I want. I go to measures and let's add average price paid in here. And I can close this. There we go, there's average price paid. But where are the values? Well, let's just take these values and like any Excel formula, let's just drag them over and there's average price paid. I can even do more fun stuff. So if I go over to here and type cube member, let's do this a bit more quickly. And perhaps if we go to date and not dates, let's type month name in here and January here. Here's January, but that's not affecting anything. I can go into these cells. Now these cells here are linked to a column, a row, my filter, and this slicer, which controls county. I can edit this formula and link it to the value in $E, $2. Now this cell shows the value for January, but let me just drag that over to here, drag that over to there. That's messed my formatting up. But now all of these cells show data filtered by January. I could type March in here. I've got a bit of text value in a cell. And now I can go back to my Excel formula up in cell E2. And because this is an Excel formula, I can link this to $E, $1. Dynamically generate my month, type July in here, August, and I can filter the data in my Excel formulas just based on what I type into that cell. There are lots of useful things you can do with Excel cube formulas. They are great, like I said, for creating highly formatted reports, especially financial reports. There's also a third option to talk about for getting data into Excel, which are Excel data types. Now, Excel data types is something that's been rolling out for quite a long time in Excel, if you've got Excel 365. A lot of the Excel data types are just general ones. So, for example, I could type a stock symbol in here and get stock data, including quotes, stock prices into Excel. But I can also bring data from Power BI into Excel. Now, before I do this, what I have to do is I've got to go to my data set, and before I publish it, you click on a table and you have to turn on this featured table option. You've also got to set up some options here, but basically turning a table into a featured table means that all of the data in that table and all of the measures associated with that table now become available as Excel data types. Now, these Excel organizational data types behave actually quite similarly to Excel cube functions. They are better in some ways and perhaps worse in others. The Excel cube functions that I've just shown you, I think, are really powerful and really great for building complex reports, but they are difficult to learn. They're not something that your average Excel user will ever feel comfortable doing. Whereas using these Excel data types and publishing Power BI data from them makes it very easy to discover this data. Now, it's very limited from a reporting point of view, but if you've got very limited requirements, it'll probably work. So let me show you what you can do. So I've set my property types to be an Excel data type, and I can type some names in here. Names that I know are property types. Now, at the moment, they're just text in cells, but I can go over to here. I can say that this is actually a property type data type. And I can click the option to link it up. Now, if Power BI gets confused, and in this case, it's not sure exactly what detached is, it's asking me to choose which data type this is. I'm going to select this. And now you can see that we've got these little images next to them that says this is a cell that contains an Excel data type. I can now start typing a formula in here and B2, and let's maybe get the description. So this tells me a bit about the data type. If we've got a measure on this table, I can get the value of the measure. Now, you can't slice or filter this measure, which is why I said it's quite limited, but there we've got a measure. But something else is quite cool. If I've got an image set up on this, using the image URL property, I can actually get those images into Excel as well, which can be quite fun. There we go. So there's that. Now, the last thing that I'll talk about, and I'm going to talk about very, very briefly, is bringing tables of data into Excel. So quite often people ask for data dumps of data. And personally, as a Power BI developer, I hate giving my end users data dumps because I know they're just going to go away and treat it like export to Excel. But if you want to give somebody a table of data coming from Power BI inside Excel, and there is no other option, they absolutely have to have a table of data. There are two ways that you can actually link Excel tables up to data from Power BI. First of all, here's the table I created by double-clicking in a cell in a pivot table. This table is actually dynamically linked back to Power BI, and I can actually edit it. And by going to Table, Edit Query, I can actually delete the query in here. And I'm going to go in here and choose and write my own DAX query. So here is any valid DAX query against my dataset. Click OK. And now when this refreshes, it will run that DAX query to get the data from Power BI. The other option that I've got is that I can use Power Query. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of Power Query, but the point is here, I can go to From Database, from Analysis Services on the Get Data option, and connect up to Analysis Services to import data. Now, instead of connecting to Analysis Services, this workspace that I've published up to here is a premium per user workspace. Because it's premium, I can go to Settings, Premium, click on the workspace connection, paste the XMLA endpoint in here, click Next, and this will allow me to connect Power Query up to, hold on, that's probably the wrong thing, but it will allow me to connect Power Query up to here, but I won't do that if it's going to complain for the moment, because there's more important stuff and I know I'm running out of time. Now, this is all in Excel on the desktop. There is one more really important thing that I want to show. This is something that is not available yet, but it is something that I've got that I can show, and it's something that we'll be rolling out to everybody with Excel 365 later this year. Now, pivot tables, cube formulas, organizational data types, they've all worked in Excel on the desktop for some time, depending on how long what version of Excel you've got. What's coming in the future is to have all of these features work in Excel in the browser. And why is this important? Well, Excel on the desktop is on your desktop. If you want to share your report with somebody, you've got to save your Excel file somewhere on a shared drive or something, or email it over to them. But we want to be able to publish our reports via the browser, via Power BI. So in the future, and this is something that I can do now, but you won't be able to do, if I save my Excel workbook to OneDrive for Business, for example, here's an Excel workbook connected up to that data. And now my pivot table in the browser just works. In a moment when it wakes up again. There we go. So I can change my slicers and my filters. Cube functions work as well. And indeed, on my build, even the Excel data types work. And of course, this is also something, if I go to my workspace and publish my Excel file up to the workspace, click here, ignore these warnings. And here is my same pivot table inside my Power BI workspace. So if you want to use all this functionality to create reports that other people can see, this is the way to go. Like I said, this will be rolling out later this year. The last thing I want to say is, which permissions do I need? What licenses do I need? This is going to be quite complicated. From a permission side, it's fairly straightforward. If you can build reports from a data set in Power BI Desktop, you can build reports from Excel. So you basically need a Power BI Pro subscription, and you'll need build permissions on the underlying data set. Now, will this work in the version of Excel that you've got? Well, it depends. Pivot tables and cube formulas, like I said, have been around for a very long time. So they will work with Power BI data if you've got Excel 21 SP1 or later. Although you may need to update some new drivers, and these can be downloaded from the Power BI website. Other functionality, such as organizational data types, is only available in the Microsoft 365 version of Excel. And if you know Office, you will know that there are going to be different channels, which means that updates and new features apply at different times. So they should be available in Excel on the desktop right now if you've got current channel or monthly enterprise channel, and you've got an Excel commercial, which means one of the e-subscriptions, or an educational subscription. It won't work if you've got Excel for Home, for example. Right, that's the end of my session. Thank you for listening. And if you've got any questions, I'm happy to take them now.
Thank you, Chris. Great session. Congratulations. And we have two questions. The first one is from Ramon, and his question is, can I create an Excel file with a connection to Power BI Desktop, even through the Power BI Desktop file is closed? And if the Power BI file changes its name or location, can I change the connection to keep it working?
No. There are Power BI external tools that will allow you to create an Excel file connected to Power BI Desktop, but this is really just for debugging purposes, and it will only work if Excel is running on the same machine as Power BI Desktop. If your Power BI file changes, no, that's not going to work well, and certainly it's not going to work if Power BI is closed. So I guess the reason you're asking this is that you want to avoid publishing up to the Power BI service and paying for a Power BI Pro license for people. No, there's no way to work around that. At Microsoft, we like to give you lots of things for free, but you are going to have to pay for Power BI sooner or later, I'm afraid.
Makes sense. And we have another question from Miguel Ferreira. And what about permission management, row-level security of other people accessing the Excel I generated? I'm assuming he's asking if the row-level security still applies.
Exactly. Exactly. If you use pivot tables or cube formulas or data types or even Power Query, when they refresh, exactly the same permissions will be applied as in Power BI Desktop. So row level security is applied in the same way.
Okay. I actually have a question myself. Those data types functionality that you showed, I think it's a great feature in replacement for those cube values. So people, when they connect Excel to analysis services, or in this case to Power BI data set, sometimes they do the cube value for dimensional data. So I see this as a replacement. Do you know, in terms of scalability, is this something that will also generate a lot of stress to the Power BI dataset, in this case, the premium node, or do you have any experience with that?
No, but what I would say is that they are not a replacement for cube functions yet. They are quite limited in what you can do. You can display measures, but you can't, for example, do anything like a slicer or a filter. And so that means that for anything other than really, really simple reports, you can't use them. They're good for kind of lookup scenarios. Now, remember, this is new functionality. It still needs to be developed. Maybe in 1 or 2 years, they will be a good replacement. What I understand is that in the background, they don't actually even generate DAX queries. They go against an API to get data. And I think actually they go against, they partly use the API used for Q&A, but I'm not quite sure. And to be honest, that's not something you ever need to care about. But I think they are going to be more scalable, yes.
Yeah, on the cube functions, on measures, yeah, I don't see this as a replacement for the measures, but I see a lot of time business users, they create a cube value for the dimensional data to get the description of a product.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that this should be more efficient than doing the cube measure, the cube value to get the cube member to get the description of a product, for example.
Yes, exactly. And actually, I would say that's one of the really good use cases for these organizational data types. If you want to publish information about a product and images linked to it and so on, then yeah, I think that would be really great. And we have got some customers today who use these organizational data types for exactly that, for creating kind of product-based reports in Excel, showing images, descriptions, a couple of measure values and things like that.
Yeah, because the Excel power users, they sometimes get really creative, and I've seen some like Excel spreadsheets with 1,000 row records just showing and doing cube values or cube members to get the description of a product, and that's completely stressed out the database.
Yeah, it does depend on how you build those formulas. If you take a pivot table with 1,000 rows in and convert it to formulas, you will still only get one query in the background. But if you write the formulas and then drag and drop, and well, depending on what you do, you can end up with lots and lots of queries in the background, and that can be quite bad for performance. Yes.
Yeah. So these were only the two questions that I have. So if someone else have any question for Chris, please unmute and ask. It's a great opportunity to do it. So please do it. I've already shared in the chat the feedback link, so don't forget to provide the feedback for this meetup. I will share it again. And
I have one question, Rui.
Go, Joan.
I have posted an image. I don't know if you, Chris, have. Well, thank you for the session. If you have ever tried the feature of what if analysis into the pivot tables.
Yes, but that won't work for Power BI.
I don't know what is for or how it works.
So this is a fairly old feature that does work for Analysis Services Multidimensional. So Analysis Services Multidimensional has a feature called write back, which allows you to write values back. So if you were doing financial planning or budgeting, it would allow somebody in Excel to take a value and write it back to Analysis Services. But this feature is not available with Analysis Services Tabular or Power BI, unfortunately. It would be nice to have, and I can see there would be a lot of uses for it, but it's not available for Power BI.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone? Questions? Tiago, you don't have any question on the on Excel? You also know some creative use cases, I'm sure.
Rui, I would like to place a question. No, Tiago, if your question is on Excel, please do it. I have a doubt, but is a little out of scope for today. But Tiago, if you have a question, please ask.
No, my question was on data flow, so it's out of scope, so you can go.
Okay, so my question, Chris, is a little near, and I am sorry for being a little out of place, but I take the opportunity. So I know that there is a new visual that is for paginated reports inside Power BI. I haven't had the time to see the functionality in particular, and since you're here, if you don't mind, I would like to ask if, for example, if this visual is now generally available, and also if it is if it works kind of the Power BI way. So I know that in SSRS it was more complicated to do calculations and to relate stuff. On the end, what I am asking is this visual bringing kind of all the functionality of SSRS paginated reports inside Power BI, and already with the old great stuff from Power BI, that is using DAX, placing background colors and so. Most probably it is not on this already on this level, but I would like your opinion on this.
Okay, so no, it is not generally available yet. It will be available soon, but all it does is it exposes a paginated report inside Power BI. So you have to create the paginated report using Report Builder, publish it up to Power BI, and then it can be displayed inside a Power BI report. Now, you can build your paginated report and use a dataset as the data source. So you can use that to do your calculations, but it is not doing anything magic. It is just displaying a paginated report inside Power BI.
Okay, so it establishes a connection to the paginated report. Okay,
correct.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tiago, if you want to ask now your question.
My question is, I'm having a problem with the data flow that is referencing a data source that no longer exists, and I tried to delete it, but I'm not able to. So I tried to. I exported the JSON file, import it again. It no longer shows the old data source, but now I have a Power BI that needs to be reconnected to the new data flow.
Yeah.
And
that sounds like you'll have to open a support case, I'm afraid. But I would expect a data flow when you've got a data source that doesn't exist. I would expect that to just work. So yeah.
No, it yesterday did refresh. Yesterday we were having a problem and we fixed it. It refreshed perfectly, and today but it already shown the old data source. But didn't complain about it. It didn't exist. It was an Excel spreadsheet on the SharePoint. But today it doesn't refresh because of it. So I was trying to.
Okay, I'm not sure, I'm afraid. So.
Okay, thanks.
I have a comment for Chris, please.
Yeah.
Hi, good morning. Chris, thank you so much for all your efforts and your work and presentations. I would just like to say I have a lot of users who ask me for dumps of data into Excel. So I use Power Query, Power Pivot, Power everything all the time, but I still can't get away from passing somebody Excel files of patient lists or appointments or bills or charges. So thank you for your work in making Excel compatible with all the Power Platform. Thank you.
I have done none of this work. All of the hard work has been done by my colleagues on the developers. I'm not a developer. All I do is just do presentations like this or help people. I don't even crack the whip, I promise you.
But thank you.
I'm sure that given your history with Excel and from the MDX, you at least you tell them that it's important to keep Excel in the loop.
Well, yes, but there are lots of things that are important.
Yeah, but from my experience, that is something that I no longer fight that fight of try to erase Excel, because that's for me that's a lost war there. So we need to actually do what I think that Power BI is doing, and it's great. It's enhancing it. It's making it more accessible, making it more useful, making it more easy to use. So it's great work.
Cool.
Okay. I think we are.
All right.
I think we are short on time already. I don't know. Do you still have time for another question?
I'm afraid I've got to drop for another call right now. So, unfortunately.
Thank you, Chris. One more time. for your time availability.
No problem. Thanks a lot. And yes, hopefully enjoy Excel, enjoy Power BI, and hopefully I'll be along to present something else cool in a year or so.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
All right, thanks a lot, everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Okay, I think. So thank you all. See you next time. Bye bye. Do I stop recording?